Good evening to you both, and let's begin with Tuesday's Battle River-Crowfoot by-election debate and the focus on the front runner.
It would be the privilege of my life to provide both the local representation and the national leadership to the community.
With the way his numbers are tanking, I do not expect him to survive his leadership review. So if he beats me, are we doing this again in February?
Yes, indeed. And candidates took to the stage, 10 of them. There we go, 10 candidates. Speaking to a full house in Camrose, many taking aim at Pierre Poilievre, saying he does not live in the riding and is only running to advance his political career. Karen, Pierre Poilievre, perceived front runner, surprised to see him actually participating in a candidate's debate. How necessary was that appearance in Camrose?
Well, obviously, he's felt that it is important to present himself in person to the people in the riding. You know, there's certainly a lot of discontent about how he's just kind of parachuted in, and from such a long distance too. You know, he was the MP in his Ontario riding, pardon me, for over 20 years, and to be unelected after that much time, you know, they found a very sure riding for him, but he's obviously covering his bases and making sure that there's no recrimination to say, well, he didn't show up, he didn't talk to us.
Barry, how much of a fight do you see Pierre Poilievre facing at the box, at the ballot box? Are there candidates who could actually give him a run for the money?
Oh, you know, I think it's going to be a lot closer. It's not going to. It doesn't certainly look like it's going to be an 82% win for Poilievre, which is itself going to be a stain going forward. At the end of the day, he's got to hang on to his leadership. And I think that little clip you showed of Bonnie saying he's not going to hang on, are we going to do this again? That could very well be the scenario. Poilievre, local politics just does not work very well. I mean, I watched some of the debate highlights, and he struggles to reach out on that grassroots level. He loves the national campaign slogans. He loves that. But you know, if people are getting serious about their politics and are looking for a different option, you know, I think he could struggle. We've seen lots of votes in the past where signals have been sent or messages have been sent, and you know, this could be a riding where that happens.
Karen, he'll face a leadership review. That's happening in Calgary in January. To what degree does that linger in the background as this by-election plays out?
I'm not sure it's front of mind for most voters, but I really commend Bonnie for bringing it up, saying, hey, you know, we appear to be being used, and is this going to turn around and bite us in the butt come January if this man loses his leadership review? You know, another thing that really stood out was how he wasn't really dressing to fit in with the crowd. He was still dressing like the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He did not tone it down at all. He was still very uptight perhaps. And I think that makes his message of just being like everybody else a lot harder to sell, saying that, you know, you're still a true Albertan after being gone for more than 20 years. I think that can be a difficult sell as well. Now, the upside is how well known he is and how strong Conservative support is in that riding. But he's got to be on his toes, and he could lose a lot of ground in this by-election.
Barry, from the standpoint of the Poilievre campaign camp, are they looking to January and that leadership review? Is it lingering in the background for them? Are they looking to see how much they potentially win this by-election by?
I think it is. I think, you know, if he, if he's at 75%, maybe it doesn't matter much. But if he drops down to 60 or below, I mean, I think that's a poor look going into it, that you can't, as the leader of the national party, you can't, you're giving away ground in the most solidest Conservative province in the union here, in Alberta. I think that doesn't bode well for him being able to carry on, and the aspirations of the Conservative Party to form government would be, I think, in the eyes of delegates, even in Calgary, would be damaged. So this has to be a shaky moment for Poilievre. I expect they're pulling out all the stops to make sure they get the vote out, because I think he needs 70 plus in order to kind of brush the brush that off. He's got enough problems to deal with going forward in the leadership, let alone having to deal with not an overwhelming victory here. So I think the ground crew has to be painfully aware of it, and they better be working hard to pull him across the finish line very easily here.
All right, to labor talks now and efforts to avoid job action. The Smith government and the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees entering into enhanced mediation. Finance Minister Nate Horner says, after speaking with AUPE President Guy Smith, they believe this is the best path towards a fair and equitable agreement. The mediator will produce non-binding recommendations for both parties to consider, with the process to conclude by the end of August. Back in May, the AUPE reported 90% of its members voted in favor of strike action. Barry, the AUPE president is crediting Finance Minister Horner with stepping in to restart the talks, and that they're prepared to work around the clock to make this work. What does that tone of discussion reflect to you when not that long ago there was talk of job action?
Yeah, I like Nate Horner, actually. He's a good guy, and he communicates very, very well with people, and I think he wants to see this done, and I think he's the right guy to kind of step in and do that. I was really pleased to see that they both agreed not to negotiate in public or to put their bargaining positions out in public. I think that's a big deal, and I think Nate's approach is a little bit less rhetorical and a little bit more practical, and I think that bodes well to make an agreement happen. It's certainly a lot better than doing it out in public. And I think, from Guy Smith's comments, it looks like they're willing to roll up their sleeves and get it done, which would be good if they can make a deal. Be good for the province if they get that finished.
Karen, how positive a sign is this where overall, where negotiations between the Smith government and Labour are concerned? Are there signals here? Other unions who are in talks should take note of, teachers included?
Yeah, for sure. And what we've seen so far are already a couple of tentative agreements. The UNA, they've negotiated a 20% raise over 4 years, improvement in mental health supports, and better working conditions. Now, a lot of these things are exactly what other unions want, including the civil servants. They've been without an increase for quite some time. They're expected to do more and more with less and less, and they're pushing back, and they're in a position until early September to strike. So there's really a lot riding on the mediation that they're going through right now. It's good to hear that there's warming in that of the relationship, and that bodes well for positive outcome. But there's still a ways to go, and time will tell. There's also the Faculty Association, associations, post-secondary institutions that have a tentative agreement as well. So those things are really going to factor greatly in any kind of negotiated agreement.
Yeah, and quickly, Barry, there's not a whole lot of runway here for the talks. Time is kind of ticking. So what kind of pressure is there on the government now to actually pave the way to an agreement? Is the pressure on the government side?
I think it is. I think they need some successes. I think between the referendum stuff, the questions going on, the Alberta Next talks and the panels and some of the stuff that's going on there, I don't think any of this has created a lot of positive buzz or positive energy for the government. As they go into the fall sitting, they're going to be facing NAHED for the first time directly. I think that puts a lot of pressure on them, and particularly with the unions, showing Albertans that they can make deals with the unions that tend to be very divided about supporting the UCP at the very least. In fact, tend to be outright hostile. I think going into the fall session, really important for them to have a win like that. So I think the pressure's on the government, and quite honestly, I think it's been a long time. I think the civil servants deserve a good package and a fair compensation here.
We heard from the interim leader of the Alberta Party off the top this evening on collaboration discussions with independent MLAs, Peter Guthrie and Scott Sinclair, on PC Party revival efforts. Karen, you joined the Alberta Party as an MLA after leaving the NDP caucus and sitting as an independent. So how did these discussions resonate with you?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited, and not just because it's the Alberta Party, but because Alberta deserves a third option. Only having two viable parties at election time really, does a disservice. Albertans have a lot more than two perspectives on things, and we haven't seen any other representation in the legislature until since 2019. Which really shows there's so much divisiveness. There's really no accountability for the government. They're just kind of plowing through. There's no moderating voice. It's either one thing or the other. Well, what about the middle? And so a centrist party with some strength behind it, I think, is really exciting for the province.
Okay, Barry, you left leadership of the Alberta Party in the wake of the last election. How much of a case is there for collaboration here?
Well, it's interesting. Albertans like to see themselves as conservative. However, Karen said too that there's more than two perspectives. Albertans have a broad range of perspectives on a broad range of issues, and I think they are looking for a practical alternative. I unfortunately wasn't able to deliver that message to the point where it made sense, but I think with Guthrie and Sinclair leaving caucus and the fact that they're identified as conservative, I think it helps Albertans see themselves there. So I'm like Karen, I'm excited about the prospect of them putting something together and having a viable third party at the next election, I think. And what's more exciting actually is if they get this done and you see a few more MLAs look to a more reasonable alternative, we'll see some activity in the House, and I think that's really in the legislature. Sorry, that's really important. So I'm very excited about the prospect, and I'm encouraging all Alberta Party members to certainly take a good look at this and see what they think would be best for the province.
Karen, at the end of the day, how do you see these two political entities meshing? And maybe to Barry's point, could this potentially open the door to some more MLAs migrating into this new entity?
Well, I think pragmatism is always attractive to anybody on the prairie, so I don't think that's a hard sell. I think they're going to encounter some obstacles in the legislature. Let's say they even acquired two more MLAs for their nascent party. There wasn't a change made, and it was done with the UCP and the NDP. While the NDP was still in power, they raised the level of members, the number of members to be considered a party within the legislature. 4 would not be enough, as if I recall correctly. And they also slashed the budget for those caucuses, for the smaller caucuses, for the independent members. So them coming together, I think, is really important because there's more power in numbers, but they need to be realistic about what their prospects are in the legislature because of those changes from 2019.
Yeah, Barry, how do you see this going over with diehard, long-standing Alberta Party members? Is it as easy as handing over the keys, or could there be a bit of debate in the background?
No, yeah, I think everybody had there's certainly perspectives in the party that want things to be the same, but I think that's kind of been a bit of the issue going forward. I think you have to be listening, you have to be flexible as a political party so you can respond to what voters are looking for and delivering it in a way that voters can receive that information. So, there's bound to be some debate, absolutely, and there should be. And the Alberta Party's always been a party that's allowed that in a transparent way, which is again a good sign. But I would fully expect that they would make the effort to work together and present a third party. Taking some of these pieces and putting them together will certainly advance the case to have an option in the next provincial election for sure.
Karen, had this collaboration not come along, what would you have considered the future of the Alberta Party to have been looking forward?
There's a lot of longstanding members who are very committed to the longevity of the party, but they've had a really hard time gaining any traction for a number of years, since 2019. It's much easier for the UCP and the NDP to only talk about each other. When there's a third party coming up the middle to distract and to change the conversation, they really don't like that. So they have done what they can to discourage a third party as much as possible. I think overall, the Alberta Party, if they merge, become a progressive conservative, whatever they call themselves, they're going to need a lot of charisma to get that message across, because debate and pragmatism aren't all that interesting to people. It's the issues that are really attention getters for people. What about healthcare? What about education? And it's going to be what kind of policies can they bring forward and how can they compare and contrast in order to be able to grab people's attention and their support. That's going to be the most important thing.
All right. We'll have to leave it there for time. Great to see you both. Thank you kindly for this.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.